Good evening. I am David Parker, the leader of the health and fitness team at the Sharon Church. It's so great to see all you here. And it's going to be even better, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Greger speak on how not to age. Now, after Dr. Greger has his presentation, we will have a question and answer period. Now, those who have already written their questions on the little card, I'll have someone pick them up. You can pass them to the center aisle at this point, if you can. Now, today we also have a special treat. It is a healthy vegan dessert sampler box. Can you see that 5 times in a row? Yes. So my wife made some of these, and they're fantastic. Okay, so you're given the card when you came in, and that's what you're going to write your little question to Dr. Greger. When you pass it to the center, we also have your email address. So if you want to be part of coming back here again, and we have events a lot. We had one, Goodbye Diabetes, not too long ago. So we always feature health and fitness presentation. I'm a physical therapist, and so commonly I give exercise regimes, low back pain, so I commonly do that too. So it's both nutrition and fitness at this church. So we're going to start right now, and the presentation will begin, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much. So glad to see you.
So the screen pops out a little bit. Okay. Maybe some of these big. I'll pass it along.
Well, good evening, everybody. What a privilege it is for us to host Dr. Michael Greger this evening. My name is Brian Alberg. I have the privilege of serving as the lead pastor here at Sharon Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I was out in the hallway. I don't know if David mentioned this or not. Did he mention that we had actually attempted to have Dr. Greger here 4 years ago? Did he mention that? No, he did not mention that. So it was March of 2020, and you know what was happening in March of 2020, and we missed it by 2 weeks before the country shut down. So we have been anticipating this. Our original date was on a Saturday night, and because of Dr. Greger's engagements here in 2024, it turned out to be a Wednesday night. But you will not be disappointed. I think that probably most of you already know a lot about Dr. Greger and have viewed many of his YouTubes. I've seen the books out, not just the most recent book, but books that he has written previously. So we are so excited about having Dr. Greger here with us this evening. This is a house of the Lord, and I invite you into an attitude of prayer here for just a few moments. Our Father in heaven, as we have come into this place, we do so with the awareness that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, mysterious in many respects. We also come into this house with an awareness that you have endowed us with knowledge and with the potential to live a full and abundant life. And tonight we are just grateful that we have the privilege of having one here who has spent so much time in research. We want to acknowledge that all life and gifts come from you, though, and we thank you for the gifts that you're going to bring us tonight through Dr. Greger. We pray this in Jesus' name, amen. Well, most of you probably are already very familiar with Dr. Greger. As I mentioned, he is a graduate of Cornell University for his undergrad. Medical school was at Tufts University, and many of you are probably already familiar with nutritionfacts.org. How many of you are familiar with nutritionfacts.org? Okay, just about everybody. Did you realize that there are 2,000 videos and articles free to the public? It's tremendous. And to imitate Dr. Greger a little bit, we've not even had more than 5 words together. He has put it to the test. You're familiar with that, yes. So, a New York Times best-selling author, How Not to Die cookbook. I saw someone with that in their hands this evening for him to sign. How Not to Diet, and now, most recently, How Not to Age. Do we have any 18-year-olds here tonight who are concerned about that? Well, I'm in that senior category. Many of you are in the middle-aged category and approaching senior category, so this becomes an increasingly important topic and priority for us. So, without further ado, would you please welcome Dr. Michael Greger?
How's that sound, the cheap seats in the back? We good? Excellent. Oh, there we go. It is a church. Look at that. Because the single greatest risk factor for most of our killer diseases is how old you are, one could argue that the leading cause of death is actually aging. The rate of death increases exponentially for age-related diseases such as heart disease, cancer, stroke, and dementia. So yes, within the same age bracket, having a high cholesterol can increase our risk of heart disease up to 20-fold, but an 80-year-old may have 500 times the risk of having a heart attack compared to a 20-year-old. Now, the reason we focus on things like cholesterol is because it's a modifiable risk factor, but what if the rate of aging were modifiable too? My inspiration for writing How Not to Age was this consensus document compiled by the top researchers in the field to identify the most promising strategies to combat aging. They identified a list of essential pathways, for example, drugs that can block the hormone IGF-1, or drugs to block the pro-aging enzyme mTOR. But as I realized, wait a second, every single one of these pathways could be regulated through diet. That became the opening section of the book. For example, boosting something called autophagy. And at a given time, most of our cells are forming and assembling more than 10,000 distinct proteins, each of which can become misfolded or damaged at any time and require a cleanup on aisle 3. That's where autophagy comes from the Greek words for self-eating. It's a housekeeping process by which defective cellular components are broken down and scrapped for spare parts. It doubles as both salvage operation and quality control, renewing our cells in a sort of cellular reset. As one review put it, the janitor is the undercover boss. Self-digestion for lifespan extension. Enhanced autophagy can delay aging, but unfortunately our ability to take out the trash declines with age. The drug industry is eager to pharmacologically modulate autophagy to combat aging, but we can do it naturally. One way is through fasting. Unfortunately, it takes a few days of fasting for autophagy to ramp up, which may be too long to go unsupervised. Thankfully, there's another way to activate autophagy. You can fast or go fast. Exercise induces autophagy. As one of the researchers said, I've always known exercise was good for you, but when we found out it increases autophagy, I finally got a treadmill. You have to do it enough, though. Autophagy is activated after 60 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, such as brisk walking, but only 20 minutes fails to move the needle. What about diet? Any foods to avoid? Acrylamide can inhibit autophagy. Acrylamide is a toxin found in potato chips and French fries. I heard that. It's formed during the frying process. The fact that high acrylamide exposure is associated with as much as twice the risk of premature death would be consistent with an anti-autophagy effect, though diminished lifespans among eaters of fatty, salty snacks isn't exactly a revelation. You can't know if it's cause and effect until you put it to there we go. Before being asked to eat a bag of potato chips every day for a month, study subjects were given weeks of boiled potatoes mixed with the same amount of fat and salt as the chips. Compared to the fatty, salty, boiled potatoes, their C-reactive protein level shot up 50% on the chips, suggesting chronic ingestion of acrylamide-containing products promotes a pro-inflammatory state. However, deep frying causes the formation of all manner of undesired foodborne toxicants, so we can't be sure it was the acrylamide. As one of the earliest geriatric medicine textbooks put it in 1849, frying is an abomination. If you just must have your French fry fix, air frying produces 90% less acrylamide. Anything that can help? Well, starving yourself generates discomfort, but there is something that activates autophagy that many people find comforting, and that's coffee. About 20 studies have followed more than 10 million people over time, and those drinking 3 cups of coffee a day had 13% lower risk of dying from all causes put together, and decaf appears to be just as protective. So it's not the caffeine, but rather the chlorogenic acid, the primary antioxidant in coffee found to enhance autophagy in human cells. More than 100 different types of coffee have been tested. Chlorogenic acid levels vary by more than 30-fold. The major contributor to this wide range was Starbucks, with its extremely low antioxidant content, thought to be because they roast their beans so dark they destroy it. Instant coffee seems fine from an autophagy activation standpoint, and brewed as more than espresso. Paper filtered is the best because it traps these cholesterol-raising compounds in coffee, perhaps explain why those drinking filtered coffee had even lower mortality rates than those drinking unfiltered coffee, though they both lived longer than those not drinking coffee at all. Any food components that activate autophagy? Spermidine. The longevity elixir, spermidine. Don't be put off by the name. Spermidine and its byproduct spermine are actually found throughout the body. When it was later discovered independently in the muscles and brain, they called it musculamine and neuridine until they realized, it's all the same compound, and so naming rights defaulted to the less palatable original. Our body can make it from scratch, but we can also boost levels in our body by eating spermidine-rich foods, which is good news because their spermidine levels tend to decline with age, dropping by as much as half by the time we reach our 50s. This decline is seen across the biological spectrum with a remarkable exception. Naked mole rats, also known by their more cuddly nickname, sand puppy, considered to be a non-aging mammal, thought to be because they're able to maintain high levels of spermidine throughout old age, something we also see in human centenarians. Hundreds of men and women in their 40s through 80s were followed for decades, and after looking at 146 components of their diet, the one single most predictive of longevity was spermidine. Higher spermidine intake is linked to lower mortality. Those who consumed the most spermidine had a reduced risk of death from all major causes, which is what we'd expect from an anti-aging compound. To prove cause and effect, extra spermidine was fed to animals, and induction of autophagy by spermidine promotes longevity, increasing the lifespans of mice, for example, by as much as 25%. In a database of more than 1,000 life-extending compounds of the small subset with the fewest side effects, spermidine has the largest documented lifespan extension. This led some to propose that spermidine may be an anti-aging vitamin. When we're young, we may be able to make enough, but as we get older, we may need to start ensuring we're getting enough in our diet to maintain autophagy into old age. Well, if spermidine is an anti-aging vitamin, where is that vitamin found? Beans. Beans are said to have the highest natural amounts. A fermented whole soy food called tempeh actually leads the list, followed by plain white button mushrooms, though pig pancreas does take the bronze. The single most concentrated source is wheat germ, though. since the serving size is just a tablespoon. It's also the cheapest source, costing about 2 cents per milligram. These days, you just can't get a lot of pancreas for 2 cents. Does wheat germ actually do anything, though? Let's randomize people to some dinner rolls and find out. A randomized double-blind pilot in which older individuals were secretly slipped some spermidine in the form of wheat germ baked into bread rolls versus placebo rolls with wheat bran instead. And those with mild dementia improved way beyond all anti-dementia treatments so far. Admittedly, it's not saying a lot, but the latest Alzheimer's drugs, for example, don't appear to work at all. All you get for your $56,000 is a dramatically increased risk of swelling or bleeding into your brain. When the FDA approved it anyway, the head of the American Geriatric Society replied, "My head just exploded." To wrap up this section, autophagy is considered the primary system for cleaning the body from the inside out. And we can boost autophagy with aerobic exercise, skipping the fries and chips, drinking coffee, and eating specific foods to reach a target of 20 milligrams of spermidine a day. I offer similar diet and lifestyle takeaways from the other 10 anti-aging pathways I talk about, but also want to have time to touch on the 3 other main sections of the book. Part 2 focuses on the diets and lifestyles of the healthiest and longest lived populations around the world. Studies on identical twins suggest only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is due to genetics. What can we do over the majority of which we may have some control? Well, the media loves stories of hard-living centenarians who attribute their longevity to some combination of lard vodka and favorite brand of cigarette. But how do the healthiest and oldest really eat and live? That's what we have the blue zones for, areas of exceptional longevity around the world, where they may have up to 10 times the rates of those reaching triple digits. What lessons can we learn? And of course, there's only one, actually, people think these blue zones still exist. There's only one blue zone that exists into the modern world, and that is the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. The Blue Zones organization distilled findings from more than 150 dietary surveys from the world's longest living people to create a set of 10 food guidelines. The foundation of the Blue Zones food guidelines is to make your diet at least 95% plant-based, avoiding highly processed foods and emphasizing beans as the healthiest protein, water as the best beverage, and nuts as the healthiest snack. That's the foundation. The final 5 guidelines is to go easy on fish, eliminate eggs, slash sugar, reduce dairy, and retreat from meat. There are a number of shared Blue Zone lifestyle characteristics, avoiding smoking, daily exercise, but plant-based nutrition appears to be the principal component. No surprise, since the number 1 risk factor for death in these United States is the American diet. Unsafe sex is bad. A sedentary lifestyle? Bad. Alcohol and drugs, particularly tobacco? Bad. But cigarettes only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many more. We are what we eat, which is good news because it means we have the power. Changing from a typical diet to a better diet would be expected to increase the lifespan of women by 11 years, men by 13 years. The largest life expectancy gains would be made by eating more legumes, more beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. So if there's one thing we can eat, legumes for longevity. Hummus for health. Then comes whole grains and nuts, and eating less meat. And it doesn't take much. the NHAARP studies, the largest forward-looking in-depth study on diet and health in human history, based on its 6 million person years of observation, replacing just 3% of daily caloric intake from animal protein with plant protein was associated with a 10% decreased risk of overall mortality. Just swapping 3%. Of all the animal protein sources, eggs were actually found to be the worst. Swapping in 3% of plant protein for egg protein was associated with twice the benefit, 20% decreased risk of dying, having scrambled tofu instead. But does eating healthier actually slow down aging? Adopting a plant-based dietary pattern, especially when rich in healthful plant foods, was associated with substantially lowered pace of aging. All we need now is an interventional trial to prove cause and effect, and here we go. Randomize hundreds to a diet centered around whole plant foods, or to exercise, or to neither. And though sadly the physical activity alone failed to actually slow the aging process, those in the plant-based dietary intervention group experienced a significant slowing of biological aging. Of course, not just about adding years to your life, but life to your years. An unhealthy eating index was devised to measure functional impairments, vitality, mental health, not just physical health, and substituting even just 1% of plant protein for animal protein appeared to lead to significantly less deficit accumulation, and substituting 5% may reduce our risk of dying from the greatest deficit of all, dementia. This may help explain why those who don't eat any meat at all, this is from the original Seventh-day Adventist study, may be up to 3 times less likely to become demented later in life. But again, it's not all or nothing. In fact, the worst thing about humanity's diet is neither animal nor vegetable, but mineral. Sodium. Here are the top 5 fatal flaws of our diet. Yes, millions may die every year from not eating enough whole grains, not enough fruit, not enough nuts and seeds, not enough vegetables. But the single deadliest ingredient in humanity's diet is something we're getting too much of: salt, our number 1 dietary risk factor for death. How do we know its cause and effect? 5 kitchens at a veteran's retirement home were randomized to 2 groups for a few years, offering meals salted either with regular salt or, unbeknownst to them, a 50-50 blend of regular salt, sodium chloride, with a potassium salt substitute like these, potassium chloride. The kind of salt was the only difference between the meals, and cardiovascular disease death rates plummeted 40% in the reduced sodium blend group. The new difference in life expectancy between the 2 groups at age 70 was equivalent to that which would have occurred naturally in 14 years, meaning that simply switching to even half potassium salt, for which you wouldn't even be able to taste the difference, effectively made them more than a decade younger when it came to the risk of premature death. What do the likes of the Salt Institute have to say about public health recommendations to reduce sodium intake? Well, you know, the presumption that healthier diets would cut healthcare costs was challenged. Indeed, healthcare expenditures increase if lifespan is prolonged. If people eat healthier and live longer, it can be more expensive. Noting that if tobacco were banned, the increase in expected lifespan would increase the cost of care of old people. Think how expensive it would be if people started taking better care of themselves and didn't conveniently die on time. Ultra-processed foods, often packed with added salt, sugar, and fat, consistently account for more than 50% of American dietary intake. Right? Most of our diet is junk. Not surprisingly, these foods are associated with a greater risk of dying prematurely, so just cutting back on animal foods isn't enough. Healthy plant-based diets are associated with a significantly lower risk of dying, but unhealthy plant-based diets are not. In the Harvard cohorts, the more you minimize meat, eggs, and dairy, the lower your risk of death falls. But that's only if you're eating healthy plant foods. If you just pile on the junk like fries and a Coke, you could increase your risk of death overall, even if animal product consumption remains low. Same in the Million Veteran Program study. Healthy plant foods reduce their risk of death. But if your idea of a plant-based diet is a vegan donut, you're not doing your body any favors. Same with the risk of cognitive impairment. Only healthy plant-based diets reduce risk. Same with depression and dementia. Same with frailty. Healthy plant foods, good. Plant-based junk, bad. And same with aging. The more people cut down on meat, dairy, and eggs, the slower they appear to age. But that's only replace them with healthy plant foods. Pile on the junk and you can accelerate aging. That's why Cornell Professor Emeritus of Biochemistry T. Colin Campbell coined this term, whole food plant-based diet. Right? As a physician, right? Terms like vegetarians and vegan, I mean, that just tells me what you don't eat. I mean, do you actually eat vegetables? Right? Professor Campbell's physician son and daughter-in-law tried putting a group of vegetarians and vegans on the whole food plant-based diet. In 8 weeks, they lost 10 pounds, dropped their LDL cholesterol 15 points. In other words, vegans may benefit from eating a little more plant-based too. Now, meat is a problem in terms of lifespan. Eating a burger may cut one's life as short as smoking 2 cigarettes. So if it wouldn't even occur to you to light up before and after lunch, maybe you should choose the bean burrito instead. What about fish? Unfortunately, our oceans have essentially become humanity's sewer. Everything eventually flows into the sea. So the consumption of contaminated seafood has become the main route of human exposure to chemical pollutants. Yes, a variety of foods are infected, but the number one source of DDT? Fish. The number one source of PCBs? Fish. Salmon is the worst when it comes to PCBs, followed by canned tuna. Salmon also has the highest levels of dioxin-like compounds. So on the one hand, fish has long been viewed as this healthy dietary component because of the long-chain omega-3s. But on the other hand, we've so polluted our world that we're now seeing heavy metals, pesticides, flame retardants in fish, forever chemicals, which may explain why, despite their omega-3s, there's been this failure to consistently observe beneficial effects of fish consumption. So maybe we had a time machine to go back before the Industrial Revolution or something. But now we have studies like this, where mice fed farm salmon fillets with common levels of persistent organic pollutants were found to develop insulin resistance, glucose intolerance, abdominal obesity, fatty liver, chronic low-grade inflammation. So even just background levels of pollutants that might presumed to be safe could completely counteract the potential benefits of omega-3s, in particular leading to serious metabolic issues. For mercury, it's more about brain function. Hundreds of thousands of babies born with brain damage every year in the United States as a consequence of their mothers consuming mercury-contaminated fish during pregnancy, with the resulting loss of intelligence estimated to cost our nation billions of dollars of lost productivity every year. In the aging literature, there are cases like this. A man with years of progressive memory loss, tentatively diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. His friends and family assumed he was nearing the end of his life. But a detailed history revealed that he had eaten swordfish once or twice a week. When the fish was removed from his diet, his mercury levels fell and his memory bounced back. No more dementia. So it seemed he didn't have Alzheimer's after all, but rather mercury poisoning from just a handful of monthly meals of contaminated fish. You see the same remarkable reversals with hair loss. Here's a common story. A perimenopausal woman seeks help for hair loss. Blood tests indicated elevated mercury levels. No wonder she had a diet high in tuna. But within 2 months of skipping fish, her hair started to grow back, and eventually her hair regrew completely. So doctors should consider screening for mercury toxicity when they see hair loss, since there's something we can do about it. Instructing patients to reduce fish intake could offer relief of symptoms and uncover dietary habits that may be the source of heavy metal-induced hair loss. Though, admittedly, sometimes heavy metal leads to too much hair. Happy to cover other foods and beverages in the Q&A, like what about tea, what about red wine, blah, blah, blah. But let's move on to part 3. What can we do to preserve our bones, bowels, bladder, and circulation, our hair, hearing, and hormone balance, our immune function, joint health, our mind and our muscles, sex life and skin, our teeth, vision, and finally, our dignity in death? For example, did you know that 85% of age-related bone fracture risk has nothing to do with bone mineral density? That's just been drilled into our heads by Big Pharma and a billion-dollar bone density screening industry. Fractures are primarily due to falling, not osteoporosis. So it's the age-related muscle loss and impaired balance that may be breaking most of our bones, which is good news because there's something we can do about it. 7 randomized controlled trials found that strength and balance training can cut fracture rates nearly in half, and that's just during the trial. In the 5 years after this 1-year study ended, those who had previously been randomized to the combined strength and balance group suffered 74% fewer fractures. That's far more effective than osteoporosis drugs like Fosamax that can cause fractures, what are called atypical femoral fractures, in as many as 1 in 300 users. We call them atypical because they occur not after a fall or trauma, but just during routine activities like walking, twisting at the waist, or even just standing still. Thanks to the drug, your femur, your thigh bone, the biggest bone in your body, just snaps in half. Too cruel an irony from a drug that's supposed to protect your bones. This is what it looks like on X-ray. Ouch. After bones, I talk about preserving your bowel function in chapter number 2. Randomized constipated diabetics to either cookies containing a tablespoon a day of ground flax seeds or flax-free placebo cookies for 12 weeks. And not only does the flax improve constipation symptoms, but resulted in an 8-pound weight loss over placebo, 25-point lower blood sugars, an astounding drop in hemoglobin A1C, and a 17-point lower LDL cholesterol, all for about 10 cents a day worth of ground flax seeds. Bladder function. The prevalence of overactive bladder syndrome increases with age, reaching about 1 in 3. No wonder bladder-relaxing drugs are a multi-billion-dollar industry. It may only reduce bathroom breaks compared to placebo by a half a pee a day. But a quarter teaspoon a day of dried cranberry powder worked nearly 4 times better. About 2 fewer daily trips to the bathroom over placebo. And that's without any of the drug side effects. Problems with dry mouth, constipation, sedation, cognition, retention, and vision, leaving nearly 2/3 of users to stop taking these drugs, whereas cranberries are just tangy. Urinary incontinence is a common problem among older adults, particularly women, thanks to childbirth. Systemic menopausal hormone therapy can actually, like something like Premarin, actually makes it worse. Though local vaginal estrogen may help, but what works 5 times better than estrogen cream, though? Kegel exercises, pelvic floor exercises, as I detail in the section For men, Urinary issues are more than a large prostate problem, having to get up multiple times, wee hours of the night. All right. Cranberries to the rescue again. Even just an eighth of a teaspoon a day of powdered cranberries can significantly improve prostate symptoms. You can buy cranberry powder in bulk at a cost of less than a penny per day. No wonder no one's ever heard about this research. There's just no money to be made. What about saw palmetto, the most common herbal supplement used for prostate symptoms based on dozens of randomized controlled trials involving nearly 5,000 men? No clinical benefits. But pumpkin seeds work. More than 1,000 men with prostate symptoms were randomized either a tablespoon a day of plain pumpkin seed kernels, a proprietary pumpkin seed extract, or a placebo. The study was funded by the drug company that made that extract supplement, but the supplement totally flopped, whereas the pumpkin seeds themselves worked. Pumpkin seed oil was pitted against the leading drug for hair loss in women. A little less than a quarter teaspoon applied to the scalp once a day versus a dose of the drug. And they both worked, but the drug worked better. Rosemary oil, though, may be more closely matched. 100 balding men were randomized to twice-a-day drug called minoxidil, sold as Rogaine, versus a rosemary lotion. Significant comparable improvement in hair counts in both groups. The rosemary lotion appeared to work as well as the drug. I wish I would have known about it. If you want to give it a DIY try, you can premix about 10 drops of rosemary essential oil to each fluid ounce of your favorite lotion. Rub a quarter teaspoon on your scalp twice a day. Cost-wise, that much rosemary oil would come out to be about a penny per week. That's why I never heard about it. Let's move from hair highlights to hormones. I touched on how menopausal hormone therapy can increase the risk of urinary incontinence, but that's not all. If 1,000 postmenopausal women take the standard hormone regimen for 10 years, you'd not only expect 876 extra cases of urinary incontinence that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, but 9 more cases of invasive breast cancer, 8 more cases of heart disease, probably 22 more cases of dementia, 21 more cases of gallbladder disease, 9 more strokes, and 21 more blood clots, though not a single partridge nor pear tree. However, hormone therapy is highly effective at reducing hot flashes. Is there any way to keep cool without the clots and cancer? In the U.S., menopausal hot flashes are considered inevitable, but there isn't even a word for hot flash in the Japanese language. This may be due to their greater consumption of soy foods, but you don't know until you put it to the test. Harvard funded a randomized crossover trial of a half a cup of unsalted soy nuts a day and achieved within 2 weeks, compared to the control group, a 40 to 45% reduction in hot flashes compared to control. Given that a plant-based diet may also be helpful in managing menopausal symptoms, researchers decided to combine the two, a plant-based diet and whole soybeans. In fact, 2 randomized controlled trials found that plant-based nutrition with a daily half cup of whole soybeans, like you get out of a can, can reduce the number of serious hot flashes by 84 to 88%. Overall, most randomized to the plant-based bean group ended up free of moderate to severe hot flashes, compared to about 95% still suffering in the control group. Lots of other things can help. Whole fennel seeds powdered into capsules to pit them against placebo in double-blind trials significantly improve menopausal symptoms at a dose of a teaspoon a day. Fenugreek may also help at a dose of 1.5 teaspoons a day, though not as much as hormones, but without the side effects. Though fenugreek can make your pee smell like maple syrup. Sounds like a bonus. The nice thing about studying spices is that entire servings can be stuffed into capsules, so you can do placebo-controlled trials. A quarter teaspoon of black cumin powder a day led to significant improvements over placebo in memory and other tests of cognition within 9 weeks. Black sesame seeds less than a teaspoon a day of ground black sesame seeds stuffed into capsules against placebo, drove down systolic blood pressures by 8 points within a month. If sustained, that alone could cut your risk of stroke by about a quarter and is delicious. What else can we powder? Strawberries. Osteoarthritis patients were randomized to 2 ounces of freeze-dried strawberry powder versus a fake strawberry-colored and flavored placebo powder. And compared to the placebo, the real strawberry significantly decreased constant pain, intermittent pain, and overall joint pain, and improved disability and overall quality of life. Why do we care? Because osteoarthritis is the leading cause of physical disability among older men and women. Yet how do we treat it? Acetaminophen, Tylenol, is considered the first-line painkiller, but guess what? It doesn't work much better than a sugar pill, but at least it's not going to make matters worse, like other things we doctors have dreamed up, like steroid injections, which actively worsen joint deterioration and don't even offer better pain relief than placebo. Or arthroscopic surgery, which may end up tripling our risk of having to go in and get our full knee replacement surgery. I mean, so look, even if this strawberry study is like some total fluke, what's the worst that can happen? Tastier smoothies? And less than a quarter of a teaspoon of ground ginger a day can beat out placebo for joint pain. Researchers conclude ginger is to be recommended as a safe drug for these patients. But by drug, they're just talking about the few pinches of the ground ginger you can buy at any store. There was even a study on topical ginger, at least when applied to the scrotum. Paper-thin slices of ginger applied over the inflamed testicles, and the researchers were on the ball, healing nearly 3 times faster than the control group. Okay, so far I've touched on preserving your bones, bowels, bladder, hair, hormones, and joints, but preserving your mind is the largest chapter of the book, as dementia is one of our leading public health problems and most feared condition of later life. There's a common misconception that we have no control over whether or not we're going to develop dementia. But the good news is that although Alzheimer's may be incurable, at least it is preventable. There's an emerging consensus that what's good for our hearts is good for our heads, because clogging of arteries within our brain with atherosclerosis is thought to play a role in the development of Alzheimer's disease. This is what our cerebral arteries should look like: open, clean, allowing blood to flow throughout our brain. This is what atherosclerosis in our head looks like. Clogged with cholesterol, clamping down on blood flow, closing off our arteries. What kind of brain arteries do you want in your head? Too much cholesterol in our blood is unanimously considered, recognized as a risk factor for the development of Alzheimer's dementia. Those with a total cholesterol of 225 or more, which is not that uncommon, may have nearly 25 times the odds of ending up with amyloid plaques in their brains 10 to 15 years later. Cholesterol explains why the Alzheimer's gene ApoE is ApoE4, how it ravages the brain. After all, what is the Alzheimer's gene? What does it code for? The primary cholesterol carrier inside the brain. LDL cholesterol, with those with bad gene variants of ApoE, averages 40 points higher, but switch people to a diet lower in animal fat, and diet can trump genetics. This may explain the so-called Nigerian paradox, where they have among the highest rates of the Alzheimer's gene, but among the lowest rates of Alzheimer's disease. How is that possible? Genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. The paradox may be explained by their low cholesterol levels, probably due to their diets low in animal fat. Human beings, since times of antiquity, had maintained an LDL cholesterol level of around 25, but the average in the Western world, 120 these days. No wonder heart disease is the leading cause of death in high-income countries, and dementia is killer number 2. That helps explain why the so-called Alzheimer's gene is the single most important gene when it comes to longevity, too, which is good news, because even if we've been dealt some bad genetic cards, we still may be able to reshuffle the deck with diet. So, in terms of dietary guidelines for the prevention of Alzheimer's, we should center our diets around what? Vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains. In other words, the dietary pillar of lifestyle medicine, whole food, plant-based nutrition. Now, if that's too complicated, plants, and more plants. Any plants in particular? Well, note that the Loma Linda's Alzheimer's prevention program singles out berries and greens. When the cognition of hundreds of twins was followed over a decade, consuming the berry pigments in less than a quarter cup of blueberries a day or a single cup of strawberries was associated with slowed cognitive aging by about 4 years. In nearly all the randomized controlled trials of blueberries and cognitive performance found improvements in at least one brain domain, perhaps because blueberry consumption can improve blood flow to certain critical areas of the brain. The one study that flopped mixed the berries with milk. And we know that the addition of milk prevents the artery protective effects of tea and prevents the bump in antioxidants you'd normally get eating dark chocolate, and impairs the absorption of that autophagy activating compound in coffee. What about mixing berries and cream? Well, the antioxidant activity of blueberries isn't just impaired by milk. Check this out. Researchers found that the total antioxidant capacity of people's bloodstream, measured 2 different ways, shoots up within an hour of consuming a cup and a half of blueberries with water and remains elevated 5 hours later. Now, with milk, maybe you expect a little less of a bump, but instead they ended up even worse than when they started. After eating a whole bowl of blueberries, they ended up with less antioxidant capacity in their body because they ate them with milk. This appears to be a casein effect. There's a specific milk protein, so we don't have to worry about soy milk or any of the other plant milks. One reason greens may be referred to as an anti-Alzheimer's plant is because dark green leafies also improve blood flow in the brain. Randomized older adults to the greens pigments found a couple of days' worth of cooked kale see significant improvements in cognitive flexibility, complex attention. Even a half a cup of kale's worth of the cruciferous compound sulforaphane led to significant improvements in processing speed and memory. The rate of decline among those who consumed 1 to 2 servings of greens a day was equivalent to being 11 years younger. So eat berries every day, you can slow your brain aging by 4 years. Eat greens every day, slow your brain aging by 11 years. Greens come up in chapter after chapter. What's the recommendation for preventing age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of blindness? Or even treating it in its earliest stages? Consume a diet high in green leafy vegetables. We're talking 2 to 3 servings a day. So at least leafy greens at every lunch, every dinner, with bonus points for sneaking them into breakfast and like a green smoothie or something. In fact, blending greens can triple the bioavailability of a key vision-protecting nutrient. The reason greens make it into my anti-aging 8, though, is because the nitrates in a serving or 2 of cooked greens can slow our resting metabolic rate. For the same reason, a little shot of beet juice enables freedivers to hold their breath longer. It improves the efficiency of our mitochondria, little power plants in our cells, effectively allowing them to extract more energy from each breath. And, the candle that burns half as bright burns twice as long. Normally, you only see this kind of metabolic slowing with severe calorie restriction, but instead of walking around starving all the time, you can just eat a big salad. What else can greens do? In the Harvard Nurses Health Study, the consumption of leafy greens appeared to protect against the development of frailty. And when put to the test in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, the equivalent of 2/3 of a cup of spinach led to a significant boost in muscle mass, muscle strength, and muscle performance in older men and women. A single cup of cooked greens worth of vegetable nitrates significantly boosted maximum power and velocity in the quads so much it was functionally equivalent to acutely reversing the effects of several decades of aging. A single cup of cooked greens. Popeye was right. About the spinach, not so much the pipe smoking. Of course, when most people think about preserving muscle mass into old age, they're not thinking spinach, but rather protein, right? When you put together all the randomized controlled trials of adding extra protein to the diets of older men and women, though, you find no evidence that adding protein increases muscle mass or strength. Okay, yeah, but what if you have excessive muscle loss, excessive age-related muscle loss, something called sarcopenia? Surely then protein helps, right? No. No significant effect on physical performance or muscle strength. What does work? Exercise. When it comes to age-related muscle loss, it's use it or lose it. But maybe exercise plus protein? No! Protein supplementation does not significantly augment the effects of strength training in older adults. In fact, one of my anti-aging 8 is protein restriction down to recommended levels. Why do longevity experts like Walter Longo recommend people cut down on protein to live longer? Here's what Luigi Fontana wrote in his book. He's another director of a longevity research center. Excess protein won't mass your muscles, but it will accelerate aging. How do we boost the pro-longevity hormone, FGF21? Dietary protein restriction. How do you suppress the age-accelerating hormone, IGF-1? You do it through dietary protein restriction. How do you suppress the so-called motor of aging enzyme, mTOR? Dietary protein restriction. In fact, protein restriction down to recommended levels was the only intervention I could find that could slow all of the 11 aging pathways, which is good news because it's easier to cut down on protein than it is to cut down on everything and walk around hungry all the time. And it may even be easier than that. Most, or even all, of the benefits, of the life-extending benefits of protein restriction may be due to just restricting particularly problematic amino acids like methionine. In that case, you can even keep your protein intake the same, but just swap sources from animal protein sources like meat to plant protein sources like beans. So in humans, methionine restriction can be achieved using a predominantly plant-based diet, which makes methionine restriction feasible as a life extension strategy. Of course, drug companies look at this same data and think, what pharmaceuticals can we develop to mimic these dietary interventions? Anything else to maintain muscle mass other than greens and machines? How about cocoa beans? Older men and women randomized to a tablespoon of regular cocoa powder a day experienced a significant improvement in muscle mass, muscle strength, and all 4 tests of physical performance. What else can cocoa do? Increase the circulation within our skin, boosting it 70% within 2 hours after less than a tablespoon. Do that every day. Within 3 months, you end up with significantly improved skin thickness, density, hydration. Keep it up 6 months, and you see an improvement in wrinkles. All by making your life just a little more chocolatey by adding some natural cocoa powder to your daily diet. I put it in my oatmeal with some canned water-packed tart cherries for kind of a chocolate-covered cherry morning sensation kind of thing. What else can we do for our skin? Well, there's certainly other antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, glycotoxin-free foods. So, when patients inquire about a diet that might contribute to younger-looking skin, evidence supports the recommendation to follow a whole food, plant-based diet. But the most important thing to prevent skin aging is avoid the sun. Exposure to sunlight may account for up to 90% of visible signs of skin aging. That's why dermatologists agree there's nothing more important to do to protect your skin from the sun to slow the signs of aging. Check out this trucker who spent years getting more sun on the left side of his face through the driver's side window. So, the gold standard is considered the use of sunscreen during the daytime and so-called retinoids at night. They're talking about a prescription-only form of topical vitamin A known as all-trans-retinoic acid or tretinoin, sold as Retin A, that has been widely proven to actually improve skin appearance. The only problem is that it may kill you. Topical tretinoin therapy and all-cause mortality, a randomized controlled trial, had to be stopped early because significantly more people were dying in the retinoic acid group compared to the placebo cream group. So what can we use? Niacinamide, topical niacinamide, also known as nicotinamide. It's been described as one of the best studied anti-aging skin cream ingredients, though that's not saying very much, but it has been shown to reduce yellowing, wrinkling, blotchiness, and dark spots in aging facial skin. For example, significantly reducing crow's feet wrinkles around the eyes. This was a split face study in which 64% of the niacinamide side eye wrinkles experienced moderate or marked improvement compared to 0% on the placebo side eyes. Topical vitamin C offers similar improvements over placebo in wrinkles and sallowness, skin tone. Unfortunately, vitamin C is unstable in creams, turning an unsightly brown when it oxidizes. So the skincare industry doesn't use vitamin C. They use these vitamin C esters or derivatives, but there's no evidence that these compounds have comparable effects. But the good news is you can make your own. The 10% solution used in the study retails for a ridiculous $127 an ounce, but you can make a DIY solution more than 2,000 times cheaper by just buying ascorbic acid in bulk and mixing 3 grams to 30 grams of water at a cost of about a nickel per ounce. Drip a few drops in the palm of your hand, apply it to your face, neck, and upper chest daily. Just don't get it into your eyes. And look, you can do the same thing with niacinamide, which is even more ridiculously priced, but you can buy it in bulk as well at a 5,000% discount. I could go on, and the book certainly does, but let me close out by going back to the basics. From the anti-aging journal Rejuvenation Research, finally, a regimen to extend human life expectancy. Was it some exotic stem cell treatment or gene therapy? No. It was a reference to this Harvard analysis. More than 100,000 men and women were followed for decades in just a few basic lifestyle behaviors, but to translate into 12 to 14 years of extra lifespan for the average 50-year-old. Even at age 50, you may be able to add an extra dozen years to your lifespan. Even at age 70, there still could be about 10 years left on the table. And if you clean up your diet before age 50, then we're talking 18 years, maybe up for grabs, based on these simple, common sense behaviors. That's the kind of life extension that you see extrapolating from some of these lab animal experiments, but after decades of research, hundreds of millions of dollars later, efforts to translate those results into humans have largely been in vain. Yet here we are, right now, with human data suggesting dramatic life extension is available to all of us right here, right now. We already have that $1 trillion anti-aging pill that biotech has been promising us. It just has to be administered in the produce aisle or the gym. Turning back the clock, not with a drug or a DeLorean, but just by eating and living more healthfully. A midlife shift between the ages of 45 and 64 to even the barest of minimums. We're talking at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, walking 20 minutes a day, not smoking, maintaining a healthy weight can result in a substantial reduction in mortality, even in the immediate future. We're talking about a 40% decreased risk of dying in the next 4 years. The researchers conclude that making the necessary changes to adhere to a healthy lifestyle is extremely worthwhile, and middle age is certainly not too late. We hold the power. Okay, so I was only able to get about 100 studies. How Not to Age ended up with over 13,000 citations. So we're only able to cover about 1% of the book. For the other 99%, go to your local public library, take out a copy. If you do have books with you, be happy to sign them after Q&A. And all the proceeds I receive from the sales of all my books goes directly to charity. I just want you and your loved ones to enjoy the longest, healthiest life. Thank you. Thank you. All right, questions?
We are so excited to have Dr. Greger here tonight, and we have another aspect of the event now. It is not over, there's more. And so there's a question and answer. Dr. Leon Chandler has some of your questions that you have written out. And we also, at this microphone, will be having some questions that are verbal. If you have a question, you'll be able to line up here, and Kevin is at the microphone here. So I'm going to turn this microphone over to Dr. Leon Chandler.
Hi, good night, everyone. So much learned tonight. As a physician, I can tell you honestly, I learned a ton. Most physicians do not know this stuff. But anyway, there was an overwhelming response of questions, and we only have a couple minutes. So I had to randomize, but I did promise to answer questions for folks who were here like 2 hours before. So I'll start there. For a plant-based vegan, is 5.4 too high of a potassium serum level?
The amount of potassium in your blood is regulated by your kidneys. If you have healthy kidneys, you should be able to deal with as much potassium as we give it. In fact, the minimum recommended daily intake is 4,700 milligrams a day, and 98% of Americans don't reach the minimum. So 98% of Americans eat a potassium-deficient diet. In fact, when we, since times of antiquity, getting 10,000 milligrams of potassium a day, which is fine because our kidneys just get rid of the rest. If, however, you have diminished kidney function, as many diabetics do, for example, you can interfere with your body to excrete excess potassium. There are certain drugs that can cause you to hold on potassium. So talk to your doctor before starting one of these potassium salt substitutes to just make sure you get your kidney function tested and make sure your kidneys can properly get rid of excess potassium.
Thank you so much for your work, Dr. Greger. I just wanted to ask some questions about sulforaphane, specifically in reference to being an effective means of preventing and treating cancer in the kidneys and bladder. I know there's some research done on it, but specifically sort of how much of it to consume, if there's drawbacks to consuming sort of too much sulforaphane, sort of what benefits it has to the individual.
Fantastic question. So that is that was going to be my next book. In fact, I forget what trip I'm in now. On the plane last trip across the country, I wrote a proposal for my next book for the publisher that I'm going to do a cancer book and go through each of the 15 deadliest cancers and talk about what we can do, specifically kind of a daily regimen. And sulforaphane, I'm sure, will come up a lot. Sulforaphane is this kind of active component of cruciferous family vegetables, broccoli family vegetables, cabbage, cauliflower, collard greens, kale, arugula, etc., bok choy. It's interesting. The publisher did not said it was too nichey. Like it was just like you know, you got this exotic disease no one's ever heard about, cancer. Yeah, but they were like, no, we want a broader. Anyway, so we're talking. We'll see where that comes out. But so the short answer is I will see all the latest evidence. So right now we have epidemiological evidence, we have in vitro evidence, we have laboratory animal data, but very few human studies on cruciferous vegetables. But so, you know, lung cancer patients who eat more cruciferous vegetables live significantly longer than lung cancer patients that don't eat cruciferous vegetables. And that's after controlling for other lifestyle factors. Like, well, yeah, people who eat broccoli also probably do all sorts of other healthy stuff, but you can control for that statistically, but it's not the same as doing a randomized interventional trial, for which very few foods have been put to the test, but some have been. So flax seeds for breast cancer and turmeric for some other cancers. So I think the study, to achieve, if I remember correctly, so you go back to nutritionfacts.org, but to achieve breast cancer killing concentrations of sulforaphane in the bloodstream, based on in vitro studies, where you drip increasing levels of sulforaphane on human breast cells in a petri dish, and when they start dying off, you're like, oh, okay, that's what we want. So, okay, how much broccoli do I have to eat to get those kind of levels circulating throughout our entire body? And so what you do is keep giving people more and more broccoli, and they measure how much is in their blood. You're like, you got it. So I think it came out, and again, you got to watch it. I think it came out to 3/4 of a cup of broccoli sprouts a day. Broccoli sprouts are much more concentrated. If anyone's eaten broccoli sprouts, woo, you don't like broccoli, you really don't like broccoli sprouts. They are powerful, right? They're spicy, you know, but you can mix it with other stuff, throw it on salad, whatever. And so that's what I would, so I presume, I'm sure there's been lots of data by then, and we'll be able to narrow it down. But that's the kind of thing that I would talk about in the breast cancer chapter, would be, okay, 3/4 a cup of broccoli sprouts a day, unless we have better data out there. And there's never been any side effects associated, like no one's ever like eaten too much, whatever. With one exception. Oh, that's interesting. There was you can overdo raw cruciferous vegetables. So there was one case report published in the New England Journal of Medicine, but it was this woman went on this like crazy diet where she ate thousands of pounds of raw bok choy over years, but it was like she had a bok choy only diet, whatever. And so she actually went to and so there's these so-called goitrogenic compounds in raw cruciferous vegetables that can interfere with your thyroid gland's ability to take up iodine, which is critical for the production of thyroid hormones. So the answer is to not avoid broccoli. It's just get enough iodine. And so if you have enough iodine, you can eat all the broccoli you want. There's no problem. But, okay, fine. If you eat way too much broccoli every day for years, and I wish I did a video about it, but it's like thousands of pounds of bok choy, you can end up in a thyroidogenic coma. So you got so low thyroid function, actually end up in coma. So don't eat thousands of pounds of broccoli. Now, if you cook the bok choy, it doesn't matter, because it kills all those, but you don't need to worry about it unless you're eating thousands of pounds. Okay, wow, that was one question. Okay, sorry about that. We're going to be here a while, people.
So this one should maybe move a little quicker. How much vitamin D should one have daily? And are pistachios really nature's Viagra?
2,000 international, I thought this was going to be super quick. 2,000 international units of vitamin D3 a day. Boom, done. But then there's the second question. All right. So I have a video talking about randomizing. So it was an interventional trial where they randomized older men to, I forget how many pistachios. It was like a handful or two of pistachios a day. I forget what the control group was getting. But it's a significant improvement in erectile firmness and measured a couple different ways, sexual satisfaction, successful sexual encounters, whatever. There was a number of different ways they measured it versus the control group. The study was repeated with, again, there's videos on this, I think with almonds, and the almonds didn't work, suggesting, oh, it's not just like a nut effect. It's not just a nut effect, but it's like maybe there's something specific in pistachios. But the almond study was done in young men who presumably had kind of optimal blood flow in the first place. So the fact that they didn't actually improve much, maybe they didn't have kind of much room to improve, whereas the pistachio study was done with men already suffering from kind of impaired blood flow to the pelvic region. So we maybe can't completely rule out the fact that any nut would work, but we do have the study with the pistachios, and they have other, like yellow watermelon has something called citrulline, it has a very similar effect. There's a whole bunch of other videos of all the different foods you can have on Valentine's Day.
All right, so for next year then. Hi, Dr. Greger.
Hello, hello.
It's a real pleasure. Listening to your videos about 10 years ago is ultimately what caused me to go vegan. So
Fantastic. How's
really
it been going?
appreciate that. Great. Yeah, no complaints.
Love it.
So I have two questions. The first question is the hard one, and the second one should be the easy one. Or should I go the other way around?
Let's do easy first.
Yeah, so you left me hanging on your sleep video. At the end, it says that you'll tell us how long to sleep to clear out your brain.
Oh. Did it not come up like the next day or whatever?
Did it? I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but I'm curious.
I would not just, no. So you watch the next video. Go back and watch the next video. But I believe it's 7 to 8 hours a night.
7 to 8, all right, cool.
is the target.
Okay, and this is the bigger one, which is for a person who has some kind of an autoimmune condition. I know there are many of them, and I'm sure there are lots of different ways to approach it depending on what you have. But do you have any recommendations for autoimmune disorders?
Yeah. So in general, autoimmune disorder is an inflammatory condition where your body attacks your own tissues, and so in general, an anti-inflammatory diet. Which is really synonymous with a plant-based diet, since the most anti-inflammatory food component is fiber, thanks to our microbiome. Our microbiome eats fiber and resistant starch found in legumes, whole grains, turns into these anti-inflammatory compounds that then absorb through our colon, circulate through our body, get through our blood-brain barrier, have all sorts of amazing effects. So you eat beans, you cut down on asthma attacks because it has such a potent anti-inflammatory effect. And so perhaps that's why the most successful treatment of Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, MS, multiple sclerosis have been plant-based diets, beating out pharmaceuticals, any available treatments that we've had. Also effective for rheumatoid arthritis, for osteoarthritis, which also has an inflammatory component. I'm trying to think some of the other. But someone comes up to me and be like, wait a second, I have something called ankylosing spondylitis or something, which is an autoimmune condition attacking your spine. Is there any data you can show me? And I'm like, well, there actually was. Funny, there was. There's a case report. Well, there's one case that was published showing that a plant-based diet did in fact help ankylosing spondylitis. But let's say that didn't even exist. You'd be like, look, it works for all these other autoimmune diseases. There's a mechanism we could use to explain that. Oh, an anti-inflammatory effect for an inflammatory condition. So look, it can't hurt. Give it a try. And not just a plant-based diet, but eating specific plant foods that are especially anti-inflammatory, like beans and greens and berries and chamomile tea and ginger and turmeric and cinnamon, and I go through the whole list in the book. I have a whole anti-inflammatory chapter. Actually, inflammation is one of the 10 aging pathways. So I would send them to that chapter and eat those foods.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you for coming to speak in your book. Question, years ago, a book came out about your real age. versus your chronological.
Sure.
I'd love to know your thoughts on that. And is there a test or what have you? What's the best way to determine your real age, so to speak?
Yeah, so there's lots of different tests on the market now. And with the explosion of artificial intelligence, there's even more tests. And so all sorts of companies are trying to capitalize on this and offer direct-to-consumer testing. And there has yet to be one kind of really well-validated one that's available to consumers. There are some well-validated research methods that probably the best one is it's called measures changes in what's called the epigenetic clock. I don't believe that's available just because it's so expensive. For people, you have to be part of kind of a study to get that actually tested. But it should not be too long before we get some good FDA-approved, tests that you can actually see, my aging faster than I really should be or slower. And then what's also nice about that is then you can measure these, anti-aging interventions, right? I mean, it's like, okay, well, let's see if I live longer or not by eating this. But you can be like, all right, I'm going to eat this for 1 month. I'm going to change my diet, or I'm going to exercise, or I'm going to stop smoking. And then a month later, be like, oh, I was, this many years younger or older than I really should be, and now I'm this. So it's working or it's not working. So, and that could motivate you to continue healthy lifestyle behavior. So I'm all in favor of tests that motivate people to do healthy things for themselves. But unfortunately, there has not been a market leader that has really popped up that has been well validated in the medical literature so far.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to try to maybe batch these two. They kind of may be related. Question about if you're already eating a whole food, plant-based diet, but you still maintain high cholesterol, what do you do? And a similar question maybe, what do I do about a high cardiac calcium score?
Okay. The first thing you do for high cholesterol is you treat the cause. There are 3 things that increase your cholesterol, 3 food components. One is trans fats. These partially hydrogenated vegetable oils, also found in meat and dairy. So cutting out junk foods, meat and dairy, lower your trans fat intake, lower your cholesterol. Second, saturated fat, which is found in meat, dairy, and junk, again, but also found in so-called tropical oils. Coconut oil, palm kernel oil, and palm oil found in a lot of junky, like vegan junk food, vegan buttery spreads, and that kind of thing. So someone could be like, oh, yeah, I don't need, whatever. I don't need lard or tallow or butterfat. But if you're eating coconut oil and some of these products, then, some like the vegan cheeses and stuff, well, then it can raise your cholesterol just as much as lard does. And then third is dietary cholesterol, which isn't found in the plant kingdom and concentrated in egg yolks. So just by cutting out the animal foods, you get, on average, your cholesterol goes to perfect, which is an LDL cholesterol of under 70 for primary prevention, meaning you have yet to be diagnosed with heart disease. And so we want to have 70 or lower. If you already do have heart disease, we want your LDL even further than that, even further lower. But so the average is 68. So the average LDL of a vegan is 68. Okay, but it's a bell curve. Right? And so some people are doing even better than that. Some people are doing worse than that. And even though they've cut out the meat, eggs, and dairy, they still have their cholesterol on the end, where they just, because of genetics, they happen to be higher than normal. So, if they and somebody else ate the same foods, they would just have higher levels. Okay, so then the next step is to add foods to your diet that actively pull cholesterol from your body. So, for example, soluble fiber-rich foods like slimy foods like okra, oatmeal, eggplant pull cholesterol from your body. In fact, Dr. David Jenkins, the University of Toronto, one of our most preeminent nutrition scientists, he's the one that invented the glycemic index. He came up with what he calls the portfolio diet, a portfolio of different foods. It's a strictly plant-based diet, but added a portfolio of foods that decrease your cholesterol through different mechanisms, so it should have an additive effect. It's the diet that's been shown to lower cholesterol better, faster than any other diet. In fact, as well as a first-generation statin drug, lowers your LDL by about 30%, and within 2 weeks, which is faster than the drug. And so that's what I would recommend for that. So try the portfolio diet. Now, there's so-called secondary causes of hypercholesterolemia, meaning it has nothing to do with your diet, like underactive thyroid function, excess visceral fat. There's other things that can raise your cholesterol. So, but the thing you don't want to do is ignore it, right? So if you have too high cholesterol, it doesn't matter what you eat, you are at risk. And so you got to bring it down by any means necessary. Start, of course, with diet and exercise, but whatever you need to do.
Hey, Dr. Greger, I got 2 questions for you. So the first one is, I love your videos, love watching them, all these miracle spices, turmeric, black cumin, garlic,
love
all
it.
these things, right? Is there any, trying to get these in my diet, I can't always do that, so I bought a pill maker and I bought like the raw powders.
Whoa.
I'm like making my own pills.
Woo! That's
my
high
wife,
level.
My wife loves it. Yeah, she loves it. So I'm taking these. I'm just wondering, is there any concern with taking these day in, day out, where the efficacy goes down over time?
All right, well, I'm about to rock your world. You ready for this?
Let's hear it.
All right, so, okay, I used to do the same thing with the capsule maker, right? What a pain, right? And it's because you can't really buy many of these spices in pill form because they're like extracts and because it's so dirt cheap. No one can make money off of it, right? Because it's literally just a spice you buy in the store by the pound. And so, but you can make your own capsules, but it's messy, it takes forever, and then, okay. It just took so much time, ridiculous. Okay. And you're like, well, if there's spices, why don't you put it on food? But then you don't want everything to taste like curry, right? Encourage everyone to get a quart teaspoon of turmeric in their daily diet. And you're like, oh my God, turmeric on my oatmeal, no. Okay. So, all right, are you ready?
Exactly.
Are you sitting down?
This is it, yeah.
Edible film. Edible film has one ingredient, potato starch. It's these little transparent sheets. You can see through them. And what you do is you put anything that's disgusting tasting, like amla, like dried Indian gooseberry powder, which is disgusting, and the black cumin, all that stuff. You put all the spices in a little pile, and then you wrap it up like a wonton, and you dip it into water. And it gets kind of all slimy and together as like a little pouch, and then you swallow it, and it's not hard like a pill because it's squishy because it's just little, right? And so you can get a whole, teaspoon of any kind of mixer or powder you want. Boom, easy, super quick, no problem. Ta-da! That's how you do it. Wow. We haven't really been studies on people that are doing this day after day, but the studies we do have, see these remarkable effects, at least lasting into months.
Awesome. And my second question was, I've got some young kids that don't always want to eat their greens, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to eat a lot of things.
Yeah.
Any quick reference guides that you have or that you've seen out there to help with young kids and making sure they're getting the right nutrition that way?
Well, so in terms of kind of the best nutrition, probably the best recent book is Nourish, co-authored by my favorite dietitian, Brenda Davis. Along with a pediatrician. So it's an excellent book. Anything by Reed Mengels is also fantastic. She wrote a book on pregnancy, but also talked about young kids. But in terms of practical, how do you get them to eat this? What's the best way to, then, we just need to, I don't know if there's some fellow parents in the room that can help. So smoothies help a lot. You can blend a lot of greens, and as long as you add fruit, it cuts down the bitterness, and it's bright and green and cool looking. But it doesn't taste like you're drinking a lawn. It's actually, you put enough fruit in, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is yummy.
Yeah.
But there may be some other good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Recommendations. Wonderful.
Hi, Dr.
Okay. We only have time for maybe 2 more questions because I want to do book signing and I have to get bed. Okay.
I actually only have one question. When I began eating whole food, plant-based, and trying to do SOS, so salt, oil, sugar-free, I developed orthostatic hypotension and tachycardia, and I had to go to Duke for them to figure out that it was because I wasn't getting enough sodium, and I never saw that addressed anywhere where I tried to, I didn't even know your sodium levels could become too low. So now I try to eat a lot of salt, but I see that it has detrimental effects. So how do you balance, where do you find the balance between too little and too much?
Yeah, you need to have your kidneys looked at. So we have a remarkable capacity. Our kidneys go into sodium conservation mode, such that you can literally water only fast for months at a time, getting 0 sodium a day, because our kidneys, switch into sodium conservation mode and don't lose sodium. However, should that response break down, this is why you should not fast more than 24 hours without medical supervision, because your kidneys are supposed to do what they're supposed to do. But what if they don't? What if your kidneys keep peeing out sodium? Well, then the only symptoms you'd get of hyponatremia, low sodium, would be these kind of vague symptoms like dizziness, lightheaded, whatever. You're like, I'm fasting. Of course I feel a little dizzy, until you drop dead from leaching all the sodium out of your brain. You have a seizure and you crack your head open. So that's why we don't want people to water only fast. That's why you need to get your electrolytes tested, make sure, your kidneys are doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, but if for whatever reason we evolved, without salt shakers. We evolved, to eat, with no added salt. But should, for whatever reason, some people are on drugs that screw up the sodium balance. Some people have kidney issues. Some people have hormonal issues that affect their sodium balance. So you really need to find out why your body isn't doing what it should be doing. But if it's not, then obviously you need to do something about it. But it's not something that happens for most people. So that's good that you figure something's wrong, and you need to follow up with your medical professional.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to ask you questions. I do have a 2-part question that is nutrient related. And the first is, it is my understanding that flaxseed oil oxidizes quickly compared to algal and chia seed oils. Is algal oil a safe and reliable source of omega-3s, given it doesn't necessarily consume microplastics as a fish would? And is the actual source of omega-3s for fish? And the second question that I have is, in today's food culture and cultivation practices, nutritional quality of produce has potentially declined over the past several years or decades due to various factors such as poor soil quality and artificial practices. Mm-hmm. Can taking individual vitamins actually, aid in having a balanced nutrition, or should we take individual vitamins based on what we consume on a daily basis? Got it.
2 excellent high-level questions. So the first is, flaxseed oil is a very concentrated source of omega-3s, this alpha-linolenic acid, but it oxidizes. It goes rancid really quickly, even if you keep it in the fridge. And the answer is, don't take flaxseed oil, take flax seeds. Ground flax seeds can sit on the kitchen counter at room temperature in an airtight container for months without going rancid. Why? Because Mother Nature pre-packages them with the antioxidants that prevents them from oxidizing. But when you take away that and you just purify the oil, well, then it goes rancid really quick. So don't take the oil. Ground flax seeds is the way to go. So 2 tablespoons of 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds is 2.2 grams of alpha-linolenic acid, which will fulfill your omega-3 requirement for the day. I do talk about considering long-chain, preformed long-chain algae-based, so pollutant-free DHA in one's diet. And that's indeed where the fish get it from in the first place. These are essential fats. We can't make them. The fish can't make them, but they get it from the bottom of the food chain. And so they just grow them in stainless steel tanks, so they're not exposed to the pollution or microplastics, anything out in the ocean. So I think that's a good consideration. I have videos about that. I have a chapter on it in the book. And then the second question about crop nutrient decline. Supplement manufacturers want you to believe that, yes, you can get some nutrition from food, but we're not talking about fruits and vegetables from your grandma's time. In the last few decades, the soil has become so degraded that the same broccoli we're growing now doesn't have the nutrition that it had. So you need to take our supplement. to, make up all the balances. That's a very common tactic used by supplement hawkers. And the kernel of truth is that, well, look, this is an empirical question, and there have been, there's been agricultural studies done in basically every country on the planet going back, and they have very close records of exactly what's been happening to our produce over the last few decades. And indeed, compared to 70 years ago, the 1950s, broccoli today has, I forget which nutrient, this was used as kind of a marker nutrient, 15% less nutrition than it did back in the 1950s. So to get the amount of nutrition in 5 florets of broccoli, today you have to eat 6 florets of broccoli, right? But it doesn't mean you have to take a pill, right? So it's true that, but it hasn't declined. They make it sound like there's nothing in the broccoli. The broccoli is just like nothing. But the broccoli would not be it wouldn't grow if it didn't have sufficient nutrients to make a broccoli, right? I mean, it has to be in the soil, or if it won't, the plant will not. It will not. So the fact that you actually see a broccoli means that it has a certain minimum of nutrient, and that's all you need. And eat your food, with a few exceptions like B12, vitamin D, sunshine vitamin, or this algae-based DHA. Thank you so much, everybody. Happy to sign.
Lobby and get one. As you can see, 100% of the sales go to charity. And on behalf of our health ministry here at the Sharon Church, we're so excited that you've come today. And if you would like to be invited in future seminars that we would like you to turn in your card with your email on it, and we'll put you on the list. And as you can see, Dr. Greger is just as much fun in person as he is on his videos. I only wish we had a treadmill for him to walk on while he's doing his question and answer. But if he was sticking around a little bit longer, I'd invite him to our game.